All right, hi there, folks. So I wanted to do one more demo here on our value monochromatic piece that we've been working on. One thing that I had said the last time we were working on this was we've kind of done the three different shapes, three different times. So there's three different videos on it. So I want you to notice, especially on mine, because I'm not set up to hold it up, but they all are a little bit different. So whenever we're making something in art, we want there to be unity, right? We want to pull everything together so that they all look like they belong. They don't look like three separate parts of something. So in my opinion, when I look at this, I've got some differences that I want to fix on this. The other thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that up here at the top where the light's hitting it, that I kind of give this a little bit of a pop, a little bit of a punch so that the highlights are a little bit brighter. Okay? Just to make it look a little bit more, maybe dramatic might be the right way. So let's fix our stuff first. So I'm going to do highlights last. I'm going to do shadows first. So when I take a look at this, over here when we did the cone, I went back in and really dramatically made sure that there was a dark line here. And then I also had a dark line up here to kind of separate, because these two values were really, really, really similar. So right now I'm going to use that as kind of my base to fix the rest of these. So when I take a look at this, notice how light this stuff looks compared to what happened over here. So right now it really doesn't look unified. So I want to fix that. So I have already mixed. I've got a bunch of different values that I'm going to end up using for this, all the way from what I think is going to be dark enough up to what I'm going to use for highlights way up here. All right, so I made those ahead of time so we didn't have to sit here and watch me mix paint. So what I want to do is I want to see if this is going to be dark enough, and it looks like it will be, because I want to have these two guys be similar, right? So I'm going, like I said, I'm using the triangle as kind of my guide for what everybody else should look like. So remember, water all the time, lots of water to make stuff work. Now I know in this one, this looks really dramatic, which is fine. It looks nice. But I have some areas that don't look like super neat and stuff, so I'm going to fix those. So again, I'm going to grab a little bit of the gray, and I'm just going to make sure that my edge looks a lot neater. And what would typically happen if I was viewing this, like if these were real and I was viewing them in a still life, is as you get further away from it, it might get a little bit lighter. So I'm going to go ahead and use this, but I don't like how light that is. So I'm going to bring in some black. And I have black on my brush, and since both of these guys are wet, we can mix right on the canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here and darken that up, because the color that was here was good. I think my concern is that these two guys are really, really close. So I'm going to come in here and do this. I'm going to make sure that my edges look crisp, because that's the style that I'm using for this. Now, is yours in front of you perfect and crisp and whatnot? Maybe not. Maybe you found that working through this process, your style is a little bit looser, we'll call it, and that is totally okay. I'm just showing you kind of what is typical, like this realistic version. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some black right along the edge of this circle. Now, there are no outlines in nature, there's just backgrounds and objects, but I want to try to create a difference in values between these two. So I'm just using it to start with, just to put the black down, because I know that this gray is wet, but then I'm going to blend it. Okay, so I'm going to pull this back out into this wet gray paint that I already have down here, so that now we've got kind of this really interesting punch. Now, these are geometric shapes, so it's okay that there's a strong edge there. It wouldn't be okay if there was a strong edge up here. That would look weird. But this is okay because this has an edge that ends, and it might make a very crisp end once it gets in here and gets into the shadow. Okay? And again, remember, I'm going to do the darks first, and then I'll go back and we'll look at how to do the highlights that are up on the top. Okay? So now when I look at this one and this one compared to each other, now this looks, first of all, really light, and there's no difference between these two guys. So we want to see a difference between the side and the shadow. So in my opinion, when I look at this, I like the way that the side of the object looks. I think I want to make the shadow darker. So that's really the only thing I want to do, because I'm not going to go crazy and repaint everything, because that would just be a complete waste of time. But what I'd like to do is alter at least one part so that there's more of a difference. So we've talked about this before, that if your acrylic paint is all dry, like this is dry, right? I can touch it with my finger. Blending is going to be super hard. So you have to have two different colors wet so that they'll blend together. Okay? So I'm putting down basically the same gray color so that I've got a wet area on here. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some black, but like the tiniest amount. So I just put a teeny weeny amount of black on my brush. I might have put a little too much. And I'm going to put that on the edge, because that rectangle should have a straight edge. So that's okay that we're doing that. Okay. Now I'm going to get rid of the paint that's on my brush, because I grabbed way too much black paint. Okay. What I put down is more than enough. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull it into the gray. And the gray is there, right? Because we need something wet to blend it into. And that's only because it's just such a dramatic, dark thing to put a black line up against something. So again, we're just going to kind of spread this out. And I'm also going to go sideways with my square brush here, just to kind of neaten up that edge. Okay. Now, what I might have to do, because the paint's dried a little bit and it's kind of just stopped, I'm going to grab some more of this dark that I was using, so I can blend the black better. But of course, I just put this down, so I've got to blend it into the bottom. And then I'm going to come this way, back into where the dark was, just to sort of get that line to not be so stark. Okay? Because as this goes into here, I don't want it to look like a dark stripe, because that would be super duper weird. All right? So I like, when I look at these now, that they seem to be a little bit more unified, and I've got these nice edges on everybody. So I like the way that looks. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to add a little bit more drama to the lids. And I'll say I like the way, because here's another lack of consistency, right? I like the way the top of that rectangle looks. I think it's a nice color. And I think it shows that there's a very bright light on this. Our problem is that I didn't use this color anywhere else. So it's not on top of the sphere, and it's kind of not on top of the cone. So it's kind of odd because that's really bright and nobody else is, okay? So now we're going to go, when we're using this as a tool, this is going to be where we use this color, this brighter color, and maybe a little bit of white, okay? So I'm going to leave this as is right now, but I'm going to come over here because I know that this up here is what should be the brightest. So I've got a very light, almost white gray, okay, that I've been mixing. So that's going to be this one over here. And again, you don't know until you start to use it if this is going to be the right value. So I'm going to start with this over here. I kind of use it here on my edge. Because I just want to put in a little bit more of a highlight. Now, a lot of the times when you're working on the shapes like this is also too where you kind of go in and you fix any mistakes. So if you accidentally, you know, if your circle doesn't look like a circle anymore, it kind of got like kind of an oblong thing going on, this would be the time to go in and fix those things. Okay. So if I've got light spilling into this, it would have a nice bright edge, and we like that, right? We like the super bright object against the dark background. So that's why we chose the values where we put them, so that it would definitely be dramatic and it would stand out. Okay. So I'm just sort of running out the paint that's on my brush right now. But this is going to be super hard to blend it unless I get this color back, okay? So I'm just wiping off my brush. Now I'm going to come in over here because I made another color that's slightly darker. So let's just touch and see what that looks like. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in. But I think I need something slightly darker to help blend down here. So I have, as I kind of go down my little wheel here, I actually grabbed this one, which seems really dark, but when I put it on here, it's pretty darn close. Okay. So I'm adding that back in. And again, I'm taking the paint that I had up here on the edge, dragging it, okay, getting a little sticky. So I'm going to go with a tiny bit of water just to get this paint to move. Remember our word for that? We want to make our paint viscous. Okay, I'm going to medium color because now I feel like my light part that I just put in is creeping down too far. So I'm going to put that darker color back. So on anything like this that's going to have an organic shape to it, I think of it like a push-pull. Like you put paint in and you push it up, but then now you have to take this paint and pull it back down to kind of get everybody to kind of play nice together. So again, I'm using this darker color. I'm going to bring that back up to the top. And remember, we're doing a sphere, so we want to think rounded as we put this in. Not just go straight across. We want to round it. Okay, we're going to round this edge as we go. Okay. Now, I like the way that looks, but let's just see what happens because we know we can fix this. So if I get just some straight white, and again, I put, you know, like that much on my brush, like a teeny weeny amount. Let's see if bright white on here is too much. Because remember, that other paint below it is still a little bit wet, so it's not gonna be stuck there as just like a weird white line or anything. So I'm gonna get a little bit more. And that's why we put down that other color first. So if we're adding white to this edge, it's got something to blend into. There's paint sitting there. Oops. Whereas if there was nothing there, it would just be a bright white, weird kind of a look. Okay, so I'm doing white, white, white up here on the edge. And as always, the sphere is the hardest part to do because there's always this push-pull of blending back and forth and back and forth. Okay, so now I've got kind of this, it reminds me of like, if you've ever seen really cool pictures of the moon as the sun is starting to hit it. I'm going to go back to my little medium color that I had here. Just neatening up some stuff that I see. But I'm going to go ahead and leave that as a super duper dark background, little tiny bit of a white edge. But now there's a little more consistency between these two guys. Okay? So then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and come over here to the cone, and same thing, we're going to kind of highlight this edge a little bit. Not crazy, but we're just going to do a little bit. So I'm going to use that light gray color that I had to go ahead and put down some color here. I'm just going to outline the edge a little bit, and especially the very tippy tip point on this. And I do not have very much paint on my brush at all. So it makes it really easy to kind of have it run out and blend. But I kind of got stuck here and made a little bit too much of a line. So I need some dark paint now. Just to soften that a little bit. And see, I didn't go all the way down the whole cone. I just wanted to add some bright to the very top of it. I'm going to wipe off my brush again. And just see if I can get these two guys to blend together. Probably going to need some water. Okay. So the water definitely made everybody spread out really well, but now I'm too light going to this side. Now I really need to rinse my brush out well, because remember we talked about when there's white paint with anything, it kind of looks like a dirty milk glass. So I'm trying to get the white out. I'm back to that darker color that I was using for the shadows. Okay, I'm going to straighten up my edge here. I'm going to go ahead and have this sort of come forward. And again, I'm taking my time. I'm being really patient because I am trying to make it look very neat and a little bit more exact. But if when you look at yours, your edges are a little looser, but it still goes from dark to light, that's awesome. That's all good. Okay, wiping my brush off again. And I'm going to try to drag some of this way. Not too far though, right? It's not very big of a space. It's just a little point on this cone. But this paint is wet, so I should be able to soften up that line so it just doesn't look like a weird, like all of a sudden it just stops. Like it's dark and then it's light. Okay, so very, very subtle. All right, so now when I take a look at these three guys, and I know what I did was super subtle, but I like the tops on those better because I can see that I've got more of a light highlight here, and I used that as a model because I liked it. And then down here at the bottom, we just defined this a little bit better, defined this, and we used this one over here as a model. All right. So just a couple of tips for those of you, like once you feel like everything is done, to go back and make sure that things look unified. Okay, they look like they should all belong together. All right.